embarking on a purge against white men in the office. Many will have heard that the chief exec of Aviva has recently told MPs that the appointment of all senior white men must get a final sign-off from her as part of her drive to rid the financial world of sexism. You what, love? You don't speak for me. This neo-feminist crusade to penalise the entire male sex, specifically and only white men, rather than simply offer equal opportunities based on merit, is so utterly insulting to women and to non-white applicants. I certainly won't be teaching my daughters that in order for them to succeed, men have to step aside. We have all the tools to get where we want to go, if we work hard enough. We all have our equal rights engraved in law, and if we face discrimination, we can take legal action. That should be it. We don't need to punish an entire race and sex to raise anyone up. And it is white working class boys that are falling behind in education and who are currently being brought up in a climate of shame where their role models and historic heroes and their nation's achievements are trashed as if they are uniquely to blame for all the woes in the world. Anti-white rhetoric is so prevalent now that businesses and celebs feel at ease commenting negatively on white groups of people openly. It is racist and it needs called out. If we let this go unchecked, the question is, who is next? The woke Stasi won't stop with white men. Next it will be women and black people not being black enough. The woke end up eating the woke. No one is safe unless we stop sanitising the discrimination of white men. Diversity at all costs will cost us all.
Yeah.
So, Benjamin, what do you think about the discrimination of white men in the office or workplace at the moment? It's not just Aviva. There have been many adverts now, you know, discouraging white people from applying. Do you think this is healthy in your woke world?
I mean, the idea that white men are discriminated against in any meaningful way is completely absurd. They have enormous numbers of natural advantages, structural advantages in the system, and that's why things like trying to hire people from minority backgrounds or other backgrounds like having a disability or maybe a sexuality that's underrepresented is important, because they don't get the opportunities on a structural level that white men do. And when you talk about meritocracy, I really find it very hard to believe, if you look at the quality of some of the white men in Parliament, that they were really there on merit. They were there because they had so many advantages in the first place that those doors were wide open for them to walk through. And the fact is that, you know, if you're a Muslim woman on a council estate, there are going to be a lot more barriers in your way than if you're a bloke that went to Eton and is a white
We
fella.
all have the opportunities to work hard and we all get opportunities at school, and
Sadly,
personal responsibility for the bad decisions you make in life. You know, we need to talk about that as well, not be ready to point the blame at this made-up structural racism or sexism. I, as a woman, would hate to feel like I got a job based on the fact I was female and not based on merit.
The problem with that argument, Belinda, is that the truth is that a lot of white men get the job because they're a white man, because the person hiring because they have so much culturally in common with the person hiring them. They get the jobs because the mediocre white men run this country. They have for a long time.
Our Prime Minister is Asian, for goodness sake. What do you mean white people run the country? Suella Braverman was Home Secretary. I mean, Kemi Badenoch's the minister.
The very fact that you can name the people that aren't speaks volumes, right? And also, I would point out, not with Suella Braverman, but often the sort of ethnic minority people that get to those positions, the women who get to those positions, tend to be far more capable than the white men they're replacing.
Well, the only reason you're on this panel is because we ticked a diversity checkbox, and it was actually the checkbox we ticked was being clinically insane after that nonsense that you just spouted.
There are a few things that I would mention. So maybe to back up what Benjamin is saying, we do know that when we have CVs that are sent out, ethnic-sounding names do not do as well in employment as English and European-sounding names. That is an undisputed fact. So that perhaps goes in favour of what you are saying. But actually, I would say we need to stop focusing on things like race, whether or not we're talking about white people, black people, gay people. The biggest factors that determine life outcomes are whether or not you're from a single-parent household and the postcode that you are brought up in. Now, that has been missing from all of the discussion, I think, this week with the case at Aviva. Everyone has been saying anti-white racism. Belinda, I'm afraid you did that. That is just as bad as people saying the reason people aren't getting jobs. Hold on, that is just as bad as people saying the reason people aren't getting jobs is because they're black. The main factors are where you grew up, and your family structure, and we need to talk about those
Sorry, I know
factors
you're
more.
trying to be diplomatic by saying that both sides are a joke. They're not. There is anti-white racism. Look, in Boston this week, the mayor of Boston sent out an email saying, Christmas party for all council workers, barring the whites. You had Aviva this week. You had the RAF, who apologised earlier this year. After an inquiry, they were found to have positively discriminated against white people by refusing to hire white pilots on a training scheme. It goes on and on and on. So to say there's not white racism is
the Red Arrows and the RAF just had to apologise for having misogynistic and rape culture issues, right? That's what happens when white men are in charge.
Oh, so that's okay.
About colour, as if white men are uniquely to blame for being sexual predators.
Also, though,
there are bad apples in every race.
Benjamin
There's
mentions
a lot more in the white people.
rape
That's
and
racist.
all those other things, serious issues. Well, he mentioned white people having some kind of structural advantage within the system. What do you say to those white girls in Rotherham who were totally ignored and sidelined because of the fact that they were dismissed as, and I quote, white slags? What structural advantage did they have?
Where's the white privilege there, Benjamin?
But first of all, to say that white privilege exists isn't to say that there aren't white people who have, tough and significantly disadvantaged backgrounds. It's saying that if they were a Muslim girl or a black girl, that they would have an even harder fight. The fact is that, Edward Enninful, who was editor of British Vogue, got mistaken for a cleaner when he turned up at Vogue House, right? If that doesn't show you that people make assumptions and expectations based on race, someone that had worked in that building for 20 years, they thought because he's a black man, he must be the cleaner.
Well, we're not saying there isn't racism and sexism. They're not saying that. We're saying
the subtlety and the widespread assumptions.
Benjamin, the anti-racism movement is going to fail if it replaces discrimination with another
racism.
form of discrimination.
Yeah.
It will fail.